Okay, this lesson for the Koine Project Class, I will demonstrate why it's totally, utterly impossible to resolve, that is, solve the young versus old Earth problem. And why that is because it's not a problem. It never was, and nor will it ever become one. And I wanted to make sure I use was and become in the same sentence. But if you remember decades ago, those of you in this class, I let you know about my Schofield Study Bible. I showed you the center margin. It said 4004 BC. Before seminary, everyone is a English Bible user. I would say general, that's an overgeneralization, but generally speaking, King James, Schofield, that would be like our internet back then when it has all those nice references and things. And anyway, so there is no concept of most of what you'll learn when you then attend the seminary. Now, the oldest Bible school in the state of Arkansas, accredited by all state universities, it has a level of academic standing that would be unsurpassed and definitely certainly not marginalized by any educational standards. So that's how serious the education is. It's just, I wouldn't know what it would be like if you were signing up and approaching the seminary as I did in 1986, and they say you have to be an old earther or whatever. That would be a total contradiction to what they do and how you learn. So I'll just show you in just a few minutes here. Genesis 1:1 says, in beginning. Then you have Genesis 2:2, in time. So you have a contrast between in beginning and in time. So there's no contradiction. You don't see people who say, well, I'm an in-time creationist, or the other one says I'm an in-beginning creationist. Instantaneity is taught in the Bible. Isaiah 48:3 says these things were done suddenly. You look that word up, it's instantly. No, I've never to date met an anti-instantonite, I suppose, if we were fabricating, forming categories like the term young. That was a new kid on the block. A formed category to represent chronological age. Psalm 148:5b, the heavens are commanded to praise him because he himself personally commanded and they were created. Then move over here to the Koine Greek has ginomai, come to be, and then Amy, the be form. So there's a come to be and a be form in the Koine Greek. And in the Hebrew, you'll be taught this H1961, ha-yah, come to be, and you'll be told emphatically and very clearly there's no be form. Again, I'm not certain that I've ever met anyone outside the seminary, and certainly not in any church I've ever visited, pastored, or currently pastor. Pastored several churches in the same community as, there was so many people there, not counting the so many people that over a series of pastors, one after another, you might say, that these people just began to accumulate outside the church who had once been there. But I'd never met anyone that would even know what I was implying, and I certainly wouldn't know where to begin with someone who really never came there for that. But we back to zero time was transpired and no loss of energy when God created in beginning instantly. We show a low level of math, sophomore level, perhaps even lower. I think this calculus in high school now and has been for years. So 1 over x, take a limit as x approaches infinity. God has all power, infinite. We'll notice that with long before you get to infinite, the expression of infinite power or the ultimate potential of that expression, you'd arrive at zero. So if x were 10, it'd be 0.1. X is 100, it'd be 0.01, and then 0.001. So 1,000th, 100, and 1/10. So as you go, you'll get to zero. And so you actually, not only did he do it without any time transpiring or energy being lost, because he's immutable and anything eternal does not change, you would get to zero, but you would actually have a remainder of infinity because he lost no power in the original. So that's the ultimate expression of omnipotence. If someone wanted to say, well, what would be the ultimate way of giving a definitive, demonstrable expression of omnipotence, well, instantaneity. So we'll move from the omnipotence, that's one thing we'll be doing this class, moving to what does it look like for him to be the omniscientist, and we'll notice that as well and look at that. So that was established, Genesis 1:1, well, back here, this come to be. Okay, Genesis 1:1, we noticed that others have tabulated and calculated long ago the value of pi. John 1:1, the value of E, the number E is found there. Decay rate, Psalm 90, we've covered this before, but here in a summary, 90% of 100% of man's lifespan was removed. We're dying 10 times faster. That's a sense of urgency there. Lifespan went from 1,000 years after the judgment. When Adam sinned, dying, you will die. So by a process of dying, he will ultimately die. He lived 930 years within that 1,000-year span. The word yom means both day and time. We found in our research that we could take the 6 days as 24 hours, including night and day for 24 hours, and there's no reason to expand that. There's nothing about instantaneity that would infringe on that. There was never anything about gap, I think is the description, gap theory, as I was taught. It was a gap fact, and that professor now doesn't teach the gap fact or gap theory at all, or the last I heard. So he went from a young earther, goes to seminary, he's what they call old earther or accused of old earthism, gap theory, called it gap fact too. Now he's moved away from that several years ago. So again, as I'll iterate for you, if you meet people, and we all do, who are no longer what they once were and are now what they once wasn't, then being neither is very appropriate. It would lead to what we would call holistic perspective, the unification theory, where competing theories such as young versus old, which is just a false dichotomy, those will be replaced by what we're noticing, which is far surpassing. So day and time from the same word. Now we live approximately 100 years. If you make it to 100, that's so remarkable. It'll be all over social media, maybe the news. So there's a sense of urgency. Also, Jesus said in John 11:9, 12 hours in the day. In the word yom, there's the idea of heat. It's hot. So he told us to number our days. Jesus warned us then. He was consistent in his lifetime, and we find him to be the creator. So when we study the creation, as we were taught in the seminary, even one of the books by one of the founders of the schools called Christ in Creation, and Dr. John Penn's book, Jesus Christ and the Planet Earth, he always brings it to the creator, which is what the creation itself in its own purpose serves, to teach and give us that which we can understand, the invisible things of God clearly understood, namely his invisible power and Godhead. We notice the ratio, which in Latin, that's from logos. So there we found Jesus again, 1 day to 1,000 years, 1,000 years to a day. We notice the Bible teaches a distinction between chronological and geological. We took 6 to 20,000 year young earth span over the different young earth calculations from history. We took 250-year increments, 6,250 times 12-hour day, like Jesus said, day. 6,250 at night gave us 12,500 years, 24 hours total. That gave us times a 360 day, gave us 4.5 million days. This is just simple arithmetic. We moved from the days, now go to years, times 1,000 years, 4.5 billion years geological decay. We took the 4.5 billion accrued geological decay, which is the severity of sin. Dr. Al Mohler actually preached this very thing we're showing, but we quantified it. He preached it, saying that the earth appears so old because of the severity of sin. Well, it doesn't appear that way. It is that way. And the severity of sin is not an appearance. It's not apparent. It's actual. So we took 4.5 and came back to 1,000 years, going back to days, and noticed that 1,000 years is approximately 2.78 360-day years. That is 1,000 days is. And you notice that number is approximately the value of E. So that gave us 12.5 billion years of geological decay that accrued in the universe. E is used for compounded interest, things like that, and we could study that and notice it. So when you were asked thousands or millions or now even thousands or billions, we notice there's thousands, billions, in between that's millions. We noticed that was days that could be converted to years, and we were reminded, as I'll point out to you now, Hebrew language is pictographic, numeric, and phonetic. Some talk about numerology, which is a derisive term, like astrology is to astronomy. Numerology would be a dismissive, pejorative term in relationship to numerics, because the Bible language is far surpassing. From it came our theology, which came our physics, calculus, chemistry, from which originated our technology and pharmacology. Also, there's no chronological time between Genesis 1:1 and 1:2. We've established that. That was an error by Dr. Bullinger, who said once the geologists have found whatever the time is they were trying to calculate, he said there'd be plenty of room to place it there. There was no chronological time there. Now, that's just an oversight. We go back to Ussher, said October 23rd, 4004 is when the world was created. That was some autumnal equinox or something. He said the world would end October 23rd, 1996. Newton said the world would end in 2060. He added 1,260 years to the year 800, when Rome was established, Roman Empire. And so the 1260 was from a 1 day to 1 year ratio, because we know that 1,260 days is 3.5 years, and that's mentioned in the New Testament. So we had Ussher falling short by 32 years of the year 2028, which is what's out there now in calculation, like the year 1988. If you've been faithful long enough, you see all this come and go, like styles of worship, they call it now, and different music forms, as they call it now, and even the way people dress now, whatever all that is. But if you're faithful, you'll remember 88 Reasons Why in 88, where they said 40 years plus 1948 equal a generation, and that Jesus would return in 1988. And we have a book, I still own mine, 88 Reasons Why in 1988. Well, but we notice now if you moved it to 80 years, as they have, and add that to 1948, you'll see that Ussher, his date of the end of the world, 1996, was 32 years less than 2028, and Newton's statement was 32 years plus. So we can take 1996, 2028, and 2060 and see that there is a pattern, but that's just an observation. But it shows you how serious it is when someone with the mind of Newton, who developed calculus, worked in the field of chemistry, developed what we even practice today, electroplating. These people were very serious individuals. But notice they wanted to understand the world through a scripted view. And I'm certain they would find it very, well, I wouldn't know how we could entertain a conversation with Newton if we were to try to remove all that we could know from the Bible. And especially today with computers, if someone with that kind of mind had access to just retrieve and manage and sort data so quickly, he would be quite impressed. So that was it. This is just an observation from someone who, prior to the seminary, would be not even know what the phrase young earth meant. Would never know anything other than 6,000 because it was in the margin. I would never know anything other than my English Bible. I don't even remember what year it was. I began to hear the controversy called King James. None of us had anything but an English Bible, and it was only the King James, and all of our concordances and books were keyed to that. So I'm not sure all that began to emerge later when people refused to go forward with newer translations, I guess. But I've not found anyone to date. We still have people at the church I pastor, been there, one lady over 70 years, and she's really, I helped so many people there that were there for decades, and then they were, if you will, let's just say, left out and left behind as things moved on, and there would be warring factions inside the church. The social church had no compassion and did not find any current social currency to be gained by caring for the dying, rescuing the perishing, and going out and witnessing and making disciples and baptizing those who believe the gospel and bringing them into a fellowship and into a new covenant church where they would know what it was to be a member of an ecclesia. So, but this is it. The problem doesn't exist. That is, young versus old earth doesn't exist. And in my experience, for almost 40 years now, consulting, companies spend a lot of money, stakeholders do, for solutions to problems they later learn in their investigation to develop a solution that the problem wasn't there. Just something was missing in their understanding when they installed that and included it, everything dissipated. So have a blessed day and enjoy this lesson.